Good evening, everybody. Today is Wednesday, October 14th. This meeting of the City Council Urban Affairs meeting is called to order at 7 o'clock p.m. This meeting is being held virtually with councilors attending in person and remotely. Other attendance via remote access is limited to those speaking on the petitioner's behalf. This meeting is being televised live on WMCT-TV and may be shown in its programming in the future. It will also be available in the future on the meeting video link on the city website. Although our rules have all councilors considered as members of this committee, there are only 5 voting members of the Urban Affairs Committee. All of them are in the chambers this evening, so I don't need to do a roll call. Councilor Dumas and Councilor Irish are also in the chambers, and Councilor Perlman is participating remotely. I will be calling on the voting members first to have them all ask questions. Other councilors will then be welcome to ask questions. We have one item on our agenda, order number 20-100-7995B, an application for a special permit by WP Marlborough, Massachusetts owner LLC, Wayside Residential at 339 Boston Post Road East, to construct a multifamily dwelling residential project on what was formerly known as McGee Farm. I will note this project is now called Walcott Heritage Farms. Before we begin, I wanted to comment on some possible misunderstanding by the public. First, tonight is a committee meeting to begin discussing this special permit request. There will be several committee meetings before we even get to a recommendation of the committee, and that will be presented to the full council for a vote. The special permit for multifamily housing will require an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the voting members of the City Council. Second, this project isn't before us because it fails to comply with the requirements set forth by the zoning regulations. It is here because it meets the requirements of the zoning regulations, specifically that all multifamily dwellings need to get a special permit from the City Council. Those same regulations also limit where those multifamily dwellings can be built with that special permit. We also have regulations for our floodplain and wetland protection district and our water supply district. The regulations in the floodplain and wetland protection district require a special permit by the ZBA before any building or structure shall be constructed, altered, or modified in its present use, and no land shall be filled, excavated, or otherwise changed in grade. Every application for a special permit for multifamily housing must include boundaries of wetland and floodplain areas as defined under Mass General Law. A quick look at the GIS map on the city website will show you how extensive those areas are. This site has met all the requirements outlined in all the city regulations. The public hearing for this application was opened on June 8th and continued to July 20th when it was closed. Since then, the applicant has been to many Conservation Commission and ZBA meetings, and we have waited patiently for them to finish their business with those commissions. These meetings have concluded. In discussing how to move forward, it was agreed that tonight's meeting would be a refresher with an overview of the information presented at the public hearing and discussion of what happened at Conservation and ZBA. Future meetings will go over the traffic study and Route 20 reconstruction, and then we can get to the updated site plan and the draft special permit. I would ask all councilors to hold off on commenting or asking questions specifically on the special permit until we get to that discussion at a future meeting. There may be some questions that get brought up tonight, but many can wait until we can take a deeper dive into those at a later meeting. I will now turn this over to Attorney Falk, who I believe is ready to begin with a presentation.
Chairman Roby, point of order before you get started.
Councilor Orm, yes.
I just want to point out that Councilor Orm is part of the listening audience at this point. I don't know if you mentioned my name at the beginning. Thank you.
I did not, Councilor Orm, and I was not aware that you were on, so thank you for letting me know. All right, Attorney Falk, are you ready?
I'm ready. If you could bring up the PowerPoint presentation that we had submitted earlier today. And while I'm waiting, I'll just point out that I see Councilor Tunera and Councilor Perlman are also in our remote audience. So thank you again, Madam Chair and Councilors. For the record, Brian Falk of Myrick O'Connell, appearing on behalf of the applicant, Waypoint Residential. And with me and presenting tonight are Tom Moran, our Senior Development Manager, and Attorney Bob Buckley. Other members of our team are available remotely if necessary tonight. Waypoint is excited to bring the Walcott Heritage Farms multifamily project before the committee. We believe the project brings a new and in-demand residential option to this part of the city and helps preserve the bulk of the property as open space. The project also gives the city significant control over the use of this land, as opposed to the various by right uses that could come in. Since it's been a few months since our public hearing for the council, as Chairman, we wanted to use our time tonight to provide an overview of the project and our procedural steps since the public hearing. As you know, we've been before the Conservation Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals addressing wetlands and floodplains that are near the development area. Now that we're before this committee, we can get into the details of the project itself. After tonight, we're hoping to have our next meeting focused on transportation and access, with our transportation engineer discussing the MassDOT Route 20 East improvements and how our project plays into the area's roadways. We just advance to the next slide, please. So to orient yourself, the site's the McGee Farm property along the south side of Boston Post Road East. This is a mixed-use area with residential properties nearby and a number of commercial properties also nearby. The site is roughly 2 miles from downtown and about a half a mile from the new Wayside zoning district. The project that we're proposing is based on the current business district zoning, where multifamily is allowed by special permit. We're not seeking any zoning amendments or overlay districts. Next slide, please. We're proposing a 188 high-end apartment units in 4 buildings. The unit breakdown is 128 one-bedroom units and 60 two-bedroom units. No units will have more than 2 bedrooms. So 68% of the project will be 1 bedroom and likely single occupancy. We have to provide 376 parking spaces, which is 2 per unit, regardless of our bedroom count. That far exceeds the parking that's required for other recent multifamily projects in the city, and it also exceeds our expected parking needs. Our developed area will be located in the property's existing building area right along Route 20. Out of the site's 26 acres, over 70% will be preserved as open space and landscaped areas. The existing horse riding ring will become a walking trail, and the interior of the ring will be left as a maintained meadow area. That's the bulk of the area that's closest to our neighbors at the Joe Len community and Helen Drive to the south, and that will remain as open space. You may recall that this project came before the city last year because the city had a right of first refusal to purchase the property for open space or municipal uses. The city declined to acquire the property. But even with this project, over 70% of the site would remain as open space. 15% of the units, 29 units in total, will be restricted as affordable units. That's unlike many of the large multifamily projects that the council has seen in recent years, and the residential projects that were recently proposed in the Marlborough Village District. Those projects don't help the city maintain its 10% affordable housing inventory for Chapter 40B purposes. But by providing 15% affordable units, this project will help the city offset the 56 affordable housing units that will be coming off the city's inventory over the next 2 years. And this will also open up the amenities that we're providing with this project to a diverse group of Marlborough residents. This is one of the more regulated projects in Marlborough. In addition to this special permit, as we noted, we have an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission and a floodplain special permit from the ZBA. I know many of you watch those meetings, and we appreciate your interest and time. Our hearings before those boards took some time, but ultimately we have a more environmentally sensitive project as a result of those permits. We made some changes to the site plan as a result, including aligning the main entrance of the site with Village Drive to the north, and moving amenities away from the Broad Meadowbrook riverfront area. The site plan set dated August 26th, that's the most recent set, and that's what's referenced in both the Conservation Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals special permit. You should all have hard copies of that set. Following our special permit from the council, the project would require formal site plan approval from the site plan committee. We've already begun meeting with committee members informally. I know you've received comment letters from the site plan committee, and we're happy to address many of those comments at future meetings or tonight if requested. We've also had a file with MEPA and received a certificate from that office that provided that our environmental notification form was sufficient and we don't need an environmental impact report. We also required a water quality certification from DEP. Next slide, please. To help the city review the project's impacts, we provided a traffic study and a fiscal impact report. Given the value of the improvements and the low impact on municipal services, we estimate that the project will generate over $570,000 per year in net revenue to the city. Next slide, please. The low cost of municipal services to the project is due to the very low number of school-age kids that are expected to live in the community. Because 68% of the project will be one-bedroom units and the remaining 32% two-bedroom units, our fiscal impact report estimates just 15 school-age children living on the site. This compares favorably to other multifamilies approved by the city recently, which have not had many school impacts. Next slide, please. As required by the City Council's multifamily development review criteria and design guidelines, we completed a self-evaluation, and our project score 145 was positive and within the city's accepted range. With that, I was going to turn things over to Attorney Bob Buckley, who he's joined our project team as a planning consultant, and here to address how the project fits in with the city's overall economic development process. Bob?
Thank you, Brian. Madam Chair, members of the council, for the record, Robert Buckley, Reman Bronstein. It's good to be back before you. You know, as you've heard me say in the past, Marlborough is in a very unique position. It has become one of the more desirable commercial epicenters in the Commonwealth. On numerous occasions when I represent commercial or corporate clients, Marlborough is always one of the cities that they are focused on, and I want to commend the city for doing a phenomenal job over the last decade in planning. You know, I attribute the attractiveness of Marlborough to a number of factors. Its location, it's midway between Boston and Worcester, and north and south. It has good transportation and opportunities, a number of academic institutions. The diversity of the product that exists in terms of housing and commercial activities. And it has, as you've heard me say in the past, a downtown. And I know that sounds trite, but that is a real magnet for communities, for creating a sense of place and a sense of development opportunities. And it has, over the last decade, developed a very vibrant and robust cadre of amenities. You have commercial, restaurants, entertainment. Hopefully we'll all be able to enjoy those again soon. Open space and recreation, outdoor recreation opportunities. And so when you add all those together, you can understand why Marlborough is attractive, because those are the attributes that commercial users, the job creators in the Commonwealth, are looking for their principal asset, which is their talent pool. So when I was consulted to come on board from a planning consultant, I was excited because I do think Marlborough has been forward thinking, and it's a process that has evolved over the last decade. But given what's going on in the world and what's the changes that are occurring, the challenges are how do you sustain and encourage and solidify what you've achieved over the last decade. So what I think that when I looked at this project, my immediate reaction is that the applicant team was very sensitive to the change that is being proposed. And if I could just say something about change. Change is always difficult to propose to a community because people are very comfortable with what they see, but it's a fundamental truism that change is going to occur whether you're participating in it or not participating in it. It's going to occur. Marlborough, in my estimation, and looking from also some of the projects I've been involved with, but also looking from afar, has always been active in participating in that change. Here you have a piece of land that is open and has a long history in the community, but change is going to occur there. The question that the council and the city has to decide is, how is that change going to occur? The applicant came forward with those parameters in mind and said open space, diversity of product, diversity of income stratification in terms of residents, all the things that Marlborough has prided itself on. And importantly, unlike some of the other projects, this project is on a corridor that has been the subject of state and local planning for quite some time, and has a convenient and direct access to amenities within the immediate area, but also to access what I referred to earlier, which was the downtown area, which is, in my estimation, a gem waiting to be developed even more than it has been to date. So the question again is participating in a change. The special permit process here and the applicant's history in dealing with the council and the residents, I think, shows a willingness to be sensitive to the concerns and trying to address them. Not everyone is going to be happy with every project that comes forward and how it is ultimately designed, but I would have to say, and I would submit, that this project achieves a high degree of the laudable objectives of the city. The alternative is that someone may come and do a project that is as of right, and you lose the ability to have the degree of impact that you, or input that you have shown to date. So we are trying to look at this as a key point, a development point that can spur economic activity on the Route 20 corridor. It's midway between, as Brian indicated, the Wayside Overlay District and the downtown area. There are numerous amenities that the residents here could partake in. We are trying to preserve the open space to a high degree and provide access through conservation restriction and preserve it in perpetuity, and integrate it with other amenities in the city. And one thing that Tom Moran from the applicant team will talk about, this is another unique opportunity because you'll have an operator and an owner that is going to be a resident. This is not a merchant builder where it will be built and sold to a third party. The entity developing this intends to hold this for some time and will be an active participant in the overall development project and integration into the city. That allows them to pursue some of the desires that are spoken about here, but also it leads to what I think is always critical, is accountability. You'll know where to go and who to speak to. I do agree that it's important to take a measured look and to push and to ask the relevant questions. And as Brian indicated, I was brought on, and my review to date has indicated that, to me at least, that the city has done that and has tried to achieve many of the objectives and attributes that have made Marlborough a very desirable place. And as I said in the beginning, I commend you. And with that, given the time, I believe I'm going to have, is Tom going to take it from here?
Yep.
That's correct. Thank you, Bob. So my name is Tom Moran. I'm with Waypoint Real Estate Investments. We appreciate the committee hearing us tonight. And we're very excited to be here, largely for the reasons Brian mentioned before. We've gone through the Conservation Commission, we've gone through the ZBA, we've received good feedback through both of those processes, as well as the public hearing we had back in July. We've made some changes to the project, which we feel makes it a better project now than it was even 3 months ago. And we're also just excited to, reintroduce the project and take a deeper dive into the reasons why we think this project is the right fit for Marlborough. If we can go to the next slide, please.
If I can interrupt you here, it's my understanding that some people are not able to see the slides. I'm not sure if it's only an issue for those on Teams. We seem to be able to see them in the chambers. Are you?
Chairman Roby, point of information.
Yes.
Chairman Roby.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
Chairman Roby, Council Oram, point of information. The slides have just, as over the past minute, appeared as the larger part of the screen. So on my end, it looks good.
Thank you. How about for the presenters?
Yeah, I
Madam Chair, no problem, Bob Buckley.
No, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I have them here. They're on my screen.
Okay,
yeah, and
thank
I
you.
previously could not see them, but I can see them now. So from my end, the problem's been fixed.
All right, you want to proceed?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you. Okay, so it's been some time since we had our public hearing, and again, I wanted to just reintroduce our vision for the project. And at a high level, we view Marlborough as a city that's rich in history and is also willing to embrace smart growth. And it was our intent and our goal to design a project that embodied that same theme. Just one aspect of that, as everyone knows, we changed the name of the project to Walcott Heritage Farms, which was an effort to honor the historic use of the city while providing a new, updated, and probably use that's more relevant in today's world, which is upgraded housing on the east side of the city. And more importantly, we wanted to do that while preserving as much of the site as possible, because we understand it's important to the city. We understand this location is important to the community, and it's also important for our project. With that, I'll transition into the image that you're looking at here. There's been some modifications since the last time you saw that, or saw this image rather. Previously, the patio area where the pergola is, our outdoor seating area, was on the opposite side of the pool. And the area just beyond the pool where you see those tall grasses used to be like an outdoor recreation area. And those were changes that came at the guidance of the Conservation Commission. We agreed they are good changes. And ultimately what they do is they add more natural plantings and habitat to this particular location, which I think we can all agree is the right decision, and a number of the right decisions or changes that we've made for this project. And then taking a step back and just looking at what this image shows you. So clearly it's a shot of our pool and our outdoor amenities. And for reference, this is situated at the southern end of building 400, which is our southernmost building looking southward. And this was done intentionally. And the reason for citing these specific things here is that we wanted our residents to be able to enjoy and appreciate what we believe is the most important amenity of this site, which is the natural setting. So again, that's going to be a common theme that you've heard Brian mention, you've heard Bob mention, and you'll hear me mention going forward. It's also a theme that we included in some of our design elements which I'll present in a few minutes. So just touching on some of the bullet points here, this site is a designated opportunity zone. And what that means is that it was identified by the state and approved by the federal government as an area in need of economic development. And that's important in the context of basically everything Bob just outlined. And also touching on what Bob stated as well is that our understanding is that the city wants to grow downtown. The city wants to grow the Wayside District, and here you have a site that's conveniently located right between those two locations, and there's a great opportunity for this to be a catalyst that spurs the right kind of growth in those two areas. The next topic touches on the preservation. Again, that's a key theme of this project. We want to preserve as much of the site as is as possible, and I think our original pitch did a lot of that, and that's only improved since we originally spoke in July. We're going to have a 15% affordable component here, which equates to 29 units. And the important part here, or the important thing to point out here is that we are going to provide the housing. We're not going to buy out our obligation. We understand the need to improve and increase the affordable stock in the city, and that's why we've incorporated this as part of the project. We're going to implement a number of sustainable elements in the project. We're going to have high efficiency mechanical equipment, electric car charging stations. We're going to have a number of other green features that are going to allow us to achieve a National Green Building Standard certification. And the next item I wanted to talk about is community. So it covers what Bob also mentioned earlier, is that this is going to be a long-term investment for Waypoint. We're not going to build and sell. We are long-term believers in the future prospects of Marlborough, and as such intend to be active participants in the community. We've taken the initial step of joining the local Chamber of Commerce and look forward to additional opportunities to partner with local businesses and organizations immediately. And that's really going to pick up when we open and we have residents living at the property. There's an innate desire for people to feel a part of a community. And what we do as a standard part of our operations is we like to introduce our residents to the greater community in which they live. It's accomplished in a number of ways. A couple of examples: we can invite restaurants to cater a resident event. We can bring in a local brew pub to provide drinks for a resident happy hour. Bring in a local artist, teach a painting class, a local fitness instructor to teach a fitness class. We'll have certain resident events at destinations around the city. But again, the idea is to introduce the residents to the greater community, foster that larger sense of community, and in doing so, foster mutual relationships with the various businesses and organizations in the city. Next slide, please. So here I just wanted to take a deeper dive into some of the environmental elements of the project. So again, we know the city has sustainable goals, and we aim to assist the city in achieving those goals, which is why we're now proposing a 100% electric project. Bob also talked about the conservation restriction earlier. Again, the goal there is to ensure that the natural setting on the site is preserved in perpetuity for future generations. At the guidance of the Conservation Commission, we agreed to take that a step further and implement a meadow management plan. And that plan applies, if you can see the green area outlined in the image to the right, applies to that location. And what it is it basically preserves the meadow as a habitat specifically, prevents overgrowth, prevents that from becoming forested, and in effect preserves the biodiversity that exists on the site today. And the next thing I wanted to point out is something that may have been, there may be a misconception about. And we had a number of conservation meetings. There was a lot of good dialogue. We received a lot of good feedback. But I did want to just reiterate that we're not altering any wetlands that are regulated by the city. And in fact, the only wetland that we are altering is a small state-regulated wetland, which is at the front of the property. It's about 1,500 square feet. We did have a meeting with the state recently to review that location. And their feedback was that it's so small that we might not actually need the certification that we're pursuing. But regardless of whether we do or don't, we are going to replicate that wetland, 2.86 to 1 ratio, effectively tripling the size of it at another location on site. Next item to touch on also relates to the top image on the right. If you see, there's two shapes, one in the center, which I'll call the elf shoe because it's shaped like an elf shoe. And the other one is the beige area to the right of that. I'll try to keep this at a high level, but we are filling some areas that are subject to flooding. And when you do that, you have to compensate at a 1-to-1 ratio per the regulations. For this particular project, we're actually going to compensate and provide, in the bullet point you'll see below, over 5,000 additional cubic feet of flood storage. But there's also a two birds with one stone theme going on here. So where we are providing that additional flood storage is at those two shapes I just mentioned, but we're going to take that a step further and actually add habitat to those locations, which are currently degraded areas. So if you look at the image below, you'll see what is currently the gravel paddock at the rear of the site. That's also in a riverfront area. Again, that is not, it's not natural. It's not pristine wetland. It's just a gravel lot. And what we're proposing to do is to provide a specific planting plan with natural plantings at this location. The space to the right on the upper image is going to be more of the same meadow type planting, again, creating a diversity of habitat for the wildlife that exists on the site. And again, these areas, one's a gravel lot where the beige area is. There's some grass that gets mowed, part of the driveway. There's a tractor trailer there. So again, we're restoring a lot of natural habitat to the site that doesn't currently exist there. You know, all this to say, we've put a lot of thought into preserving the site, as much of the site as we can. And a lot of guidance came from the Conservation Commission. And similar to what Bob mentioned earlier, is that the processes we've gone through have allowed us to shape the project to something that we think is going to be beneficial for the city and the community as well. We can go to the next slide, please. So this is an image of the buildings from Boston Post Road. The thing to point out here is that architecturally, the goal was to provide buildings that, again, spoke to the historical use of the site. So it might be a little bit difficult to see, but part of the facade has this board and batten type siding on it, which, again, is meant to look like a modern barn. So it's that same theme of old and new. We honor the historic use of the site while providing an updated modern aesthetic. Next slide, please. And this is a shot of building 400. This is the building that houses all of our amenities and the leasing office, which you can see on the bottom level at the foreground. The pool is at the rear of this building. Same type of architecture. Main difference is here that this is a different color scheme, so we wanted to add differentiation and avoid a monolithic look on the property. Next slide, please. So here's a shot of our club room. Just some, design elements to point out. We have the floor-to-ceiling windows, which is intended to maximize daylight and maximize view, again, of the greatest amenity on the site, which is the green space. You'll also see some other design elements. Up top, we have the bird drawings, which reflects the actual art that's going to be there. And again, we wanted to bring the outdoors inside and make that theme continuous throughout the project. Next slide, please. So here's an expanded view of the club room. Main thing to highlight here is that we intend to build a quality project. It's something that we want to be proud of and want the city to be proud of as well. Next slide, please. Here's a shot of our game room. Again, just some minor details that have a big impact. You see the horse statue on top of the fireplace, again, referencing the site's historical use, creates a story we can tell to the residents here so they can carry on the history of what the site was. And then you'll also see the wallpaper is a forested tree line. That is the actual wallpaper that's going to be in the project. And again, just making that theme of nature continuous throughout the project. Next slide, please. So here's a shot of our fitness center. You see the cycle and stretching and yoga room off to the right. Next slide, please. And then here's a shot of another shot of the fitness center, our cardio equipment. So, in closing my portion of the presentation, I want to reiterate that we're viewing this project as a long-term partnership with the city of Marlborough and the greater community. We feel it's been a very constructive process to date, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback. We've made, quite a few changes to the project to implement the feedback received and put a lot of thought and consideration into the feedback that we have received. Clearly preservation and sustainability are two key themes of this project, and given the location, we feel this can be a catalyst for smart growth in the right locations in the city of Marlborough. So with that, thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Bob.
Thank you, Tom. Next slide, please. As the chair indicated that I believe our next meeting will do a deep dive into transportation issues, but when I reviewed what is Mass DOT, what they're doing on Route 20, some of the changes that have been effectuated to date in the design elements of the project, and talking to the team members, I think that we'll be in a position with our consultants at the next meeting to show that we think that the traffic can be adequately managed here and engage in a real meaningful discussion, because we all know that traffic or transportation issues is an important attribute of any project. But I would ask the chair and the council in the review that while we feel confident we'll be able to show that the site traffic is adequately managed through the development process. I would ask that we also have a discussion as to how we can utilize this site in a transportation corridor to tie the elements that we've spoken to during this presentation, which is the downtown area as well as the wayside area, and both now and in the future, so that we could prepare for that. Because I do think that this corridor is like a spoke on the wheel that is emanating out of the downtown area, which, you know, I don't want to repeat myself, but I do think that's such a gem to have that in today's environment. And Marlborough is going to become increasingly more attractive as the urban core of the metropolitan Boston area is going to change dramatically, perhaps over the next 5 years. So we'd like to engage in not only a site impact discussion, but utilize what has happened with the Route 20 improvements to go to the next level and talk about how this project could be a contributor to its sustaining the overall economic success that Marlborough has had. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to Brian, if he wants to add anything else.
Thanks, Bob and Tom. Just wrapping up, we believe this project would be a great addition to the city, preserve the bulk of the property as open space, bringing significant net tax revenues to the city, and bring additional housing options to this part of Marlborough. We look forward to working with the committee in its review of our proposal. Thank you.
All right. So Attorney Falk, that's all you have for us to begin with. I can open this up to committee members for
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you.
questions, comments. Thank you. All right, anybody on the committee have questions, comments? Councillor Wagner. Oh, Councillor Doucette, are you?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions, couple of comments as far as this goes. I am extremely concerned about the amount of traffic and how this development will impact the traffic in that area. The proposed size is larger than the development across the street in Village Drive, as well as the Joe Lynn Trailer Park that's next to it. Also, those are now both retirement communities, which has a different type of traffic characteristics than this type of development, which is more younger generations, so that will also have an impact on it. You know, I was watching a lot of the development that's going on. I hope that we work more with you as the developers in more of a working relationship. You know, Marlborough has we're fortunate to have a group of professionals and volunteers that do a lot of work for the city, and they've been involved in the previous committees, and they've brought up a lot of issues, and I compliment everyone that was involved in reviewing this program already. So, and thank them for their work. So I think that this is brought up many times by members of the city as well as the community, that the size of this development is a big issue. I think that we need to do something, or you guys need to consider something to reduce the size overall. You know, there is a large part of this land that's basically not developable. You know, it's wetlands. So, you know, how that's not going to get touched in the long run, but we need to figure out, you know, something that can be done with this. Also, if you can think of reducing the size, you may get rid of this ancillary parking area as a possibility. You know, this is an all-electric facility. I applaud you guys on that. You guys should also be considering to put solar on the roof, or at least over the parking areas. There was a development that was being proposed on the other side of town. They started looking to solar, and there was just, their response was, it's brain dead easy financially to do solar. So I think you guys may want to consider doing that as well. Also, and you know, getting the plans now, I would have preferred to get these little bit earlier, so I would have a chance to review it. You know, I'm just going to leave that at that. And I hope that, you know, we work towards a working relationship in trying to address the issues that are being raised by the community on this development. You know, if this was being proposed in another area, there wouldn't be this much against it, you know, but this is a really tough location to put this in. One of the things you guys need to consider is that, you know, next to you is this monolithic parking storage area, right? And that got in without coming to the council at all. I've gotten more complaints, and most of the city councilors have gotten a lot of complaints about that building. And the buildings that you're proposing, the way that they front Route 20 is the exact same approach. And there's going to get a lot of complaints about that, even after it goes up. This property is not part of the Wayside zoning district, but the Wayside zoning district did have a step-back design as part of their proposal, so that it wasn't just this monolithic view facing the city. So you guys should look into possibly doing that as part of a redesign for the buildings in the front. So, that's about as much as I can say for now. Thank you.
All right, just a comment to you, Councilor Doucette. We will go in that deep dive on traffic at our next meeting, so we will certainly entertain your questions. And as I stated, site plan and the special permit are for a meeting well into the future, so you have plenty of time to review the document that you received tonight. If, for councilors who've been following along at Conservation, those documents have been out there through Conservation, so we have had an opportunity to look at them. All right, Councilor Wagner.
Thank you. I'd like to echo what Dave said. I think these are the kinds of projects I'd like to see in the city. The fact that there's the 15% affordable unit commitment, preservation of the open space, but, you know, I applaud you for that, but it's, you know, wetlands that can't be built on, so it's not necessarily part of the design. There's a lot of land that you can't build on there, but the idea of it is still great. Love that it's electric. Love the going after the green certification. Those are the kinds of projects that are just so important in the city right now. My concern is really about the location. So, and there's a number of things we may or may not but there's some things I'd like to bring up tonight. So specifically, at the 9:15 ZBA meeting, the question was brought up about if there'd be any blasting, and the issue of blasting is not. Attorney said it wasn't relative to the Floodplain and Wetland Protection Act, but Attorney Falk, at the time you said you didn't feel there'd be a need for blasting on site. But on page 8 of the water quality certification document, it specifically said that you would not be considering a lesser scope or scale of this project, and it was not feasible due to the significant site development construction costs due to ledge excavation. So can you clarify, you know, in one document it said you wouldn't even consider a smaller scope project because there's a lot to do with the costs associated with ledge excavation, and yet when it was brought up at the ZBA meeting, Attorney Falk, you said you didn't think there'd be any blasting. Could you say more about that?
Sure, I'll say what I can, and I may ask Tom Moran to jump in as well. So the water quality certification you're referring to I didn't prepare it. There were some terms used that I wouldn't have used. Overall, the site development costs involve, you know, the preservation work, the additional floodplain storage work that we're doing, replication of wetlands, bringing in fill to level out the site to get it to where we need it to be. Those costs aren't insignificant, and it is true that the unit count that we've chosen is one that will make the project work financially. In terms of ledge blasting, I'm not aware of what we'll need to do. Some of that will come as we get into, you know, actual construction work in terms of what we'll need to do. I'm not aware of significant blasting that we need to do. I know there has been some ledge or rocks that have been seen on an initial review, but it's not anticipated to be a massive blasting operation at all. Tom, if you have anything further to add to that.
Yeah. With the water quality certification, you hit it on the head, Brian. Is that the intent of that language was to show that we have a lot of site work to do at the site, and that therefore increases the cost from what you would see for a similar project at a different location. So with respect to the ledge, our geotechnical report did find ledge at locations between 3 and 8 feet below the surface. The thing to consider here is that we do have a significant fill condition. So we're going to put a fair amount of dirt in, and then when we go to put foundation, we might not actually encounter that ledge. It's more unlikely that we will encounter that ledge. If we do, the first step is to try to rip it, which again, you take the machine and you just try to claw it out. If that doesn't work, then there might be minor blasting, but again, due to the sparse locations that they found ledge and due to the fact that we're filling this significantly, we don't anticipate there being much blasting on the site, if at all.
Okay, it's still concerning to me because don't anticipate much blasting. No, there isn't going to be blasting, and it's a big unknown. And I think that needs to be very upfront to be aware of what's going to happen on that site, because that's definitely a concern. On the DP order of conditions on page 10, there was the comment made there. There's a concern that this underlines what I think certainly what I have as a concern. It's stated that there's a concern that the project is really too much building and pavement on this small section of land. And the fact that that was brought up, that is definitely a concern that I have. The dog waste, I want to bring that up too. The dog waste issue and the snow dumping, there's a lot of promises associated with what's going to happen. I did hear you say tonight that this won't be sold to a third party. But there's quite a few of these projects have been sold, so there's really no guarantee to the city. This unit could be built, these promises could be made, all these conditions put in place, and it could easily, if it's sold, then there's a lot of oversight that has to happen that makes sure whoever buys it follows through on this. A next buyer could come in and not want to have anything to do with DNA testing of dog waste. So I think that those are concerns that I would like to raise up as well. This was a question that was concerning to me. In the original purchase and sale from 2018, there were 6 amendments. And one of the amendments said that the land between the parcel that would contain the satellite lot and the main chunk of land is not owned by Ms. Fry. And the paragraph calls the remaining land, and it demands that Ms. Fry finds an owner and buys that piece of land to include in the sale. Is this something that still is an issue? Is there, I would like some clarification on that part of land, that area of land.
Yeah, so that particular parcel is in the legal process now, and that's the seller's business. And the intent of the PSA is that if they do acquire it, then we would then acquire it from them. That area, it's all wetlands, so there's nothing to be built there. So that would just, that's another area that would remain as is. And if and when we do acquire it, we wanted to loop that into a conservation restriction, we're more than happy to do so.
Okay, because that seems like a problem if the land between the satellite parking lot and the units that you're building isn't going to be owned by you. So that's still, so that hasn't been settled. That's still in process, you're saying?
Yeah, it's still in process. It's atypical, but not highly unusual. You do see those situations sometimes, and it's not difficult to manage that.
If I may, Madam Chair, through you, that parcel is not part of this application. We have nothing proposed there. There's nothing you would do here with this special permit that would allow us to do anything with that parcel anyway. It is true that the satellite parking isn't contiguous with the development site, but it is within 400 feet, and so is consistent with zoning. And again, because the business district has this 2 spaces per unit requirement that is above and beyond what other multifamilies have to do. That's why we're doing this, the satellite parking, is to comply with the number of parking spaces. Quite honestly, we don't expect many of our residents to ever use that area. But another item I just mentioned briefly is that in the draft special permit decision we put forward, we are obligated, if MassDOT is putting sidewalks in along this area, if MassDOT does not get those sidewalks in the time that we're looking for occupancy, we have to build the sidewalk. So there will be pedestrian access between the satellite parking and the main building site.
Okay, but you'll be able to build that on land that you potentially don't own?
We own the land with the satellite. We will own the land. That's part of this application and part of the purchase and sale. It's the spot in between. That's right along Route 20. There are title issues with it, and that's why it's not part of the current package. Mm-hmm. But again, as Tom mentioned, it's all wet, so it wouldn't likely be built on anyway.
Mm-hmm. Two other concerns that we may not be able to get in tonight, but I just wanted to lift them up, is there was a pumping station added to the villages to maintain sewage pressure. And now with this big development coming in, it's a concern I want to raise. I don't know if won't be able to really answer that tonight, but now putting this new development in, how that's going to impact. There already was a problem. The pumping station was put in, and now we're putting a pretty significant increase on demand in there. And water pressure comes in with that too. In the E&F letter from August 12th on page 2, it indicated that the estimated water demand for this facility will be 38,284 gallons per day, with wastewater being at 32,736 gallons per day. And in that section, the DEP suggested that the Spoon Hill water storage tank should be improved to address quality turnover issues. So, I mean, there's an indication that this facility is going to have an impact on water. So that is a concern, because that feels like it falls out the scope of view, and the city is going to have to deal with that.
And Councilor Wagner, if I can jump in there, I think that this will go into a lot further detail when we get to the actual special
Okay.
permit.
I wanted to lift it up, though, tonight, because I think we need to be really honest right up front. There's
Right.
a lot of concerns to this project. And just two more quick things. Hazardous waste, I wanted to list that up, and the DEP environmental notification form. There was an indication that the concerns during the construction on air quality, asbestos, demolition, solid waste removal from the site. The state also advised that the proponent to contract the Bureau of Waste cleanup site to remove any hazardous materials. And it's been brought to my attention there's at least 2 oil tanks on the site, one of which is buried, one is above ground. There is asbestos within the house, and various barrels of black liquid around the crematorium. So that concerns me, and I don't know how much that's been factored in, but there's going to be some hazardous waste concerns there, how that impacts the community while that's being, if that's not properly dealt with. I wanted to make sure that that was at least lifted up. Dave made a good comment about the rooftop solar. In that same DEP, the E&F, it also talked about on page 5, that the DEP strongly encourages you to incorporate rooftop solar into the final design of the buildings in order to mitigate the anticipated adverse environmental impacts caused by the destruction of vegetation, increased traffic, and increased impervious surfaces associated with the project. So again, that's another concern that was in and highlighted. And I'll end with, can't be clearer, and it just really resonated with me when you showed that lovely picture of the building smack up against Route 20 and the people sitting out on their balconies. They're going to be, the increased traffic is going to increase, it's going to affect the air quality, increase more toxic particulates into the air, producing more carbon emissions. I'm just thinking about the people sitting there with the carbon emissions as that traffic gets even worse, because that is such a congested corridor, and to introduce all this traffic in, they won't even be able to open their doors because they're going to be breathing that in. And I think about how that affects the surrounding communities that already exist. And clearly during this pandemic, I mean, this has been an issue you can trace in the communities where the poorest air quality is, high carbon emissions, high particulates. There's already higher cases of asthma. And so any project like this is one of my main concerns, is how it's going to impact air quality and the impact of the city, and that can't be measured. I mean, I appreciate the dollars that were lifted up, but the impact on public health is something that has to be paramount, particularly in this time in which we live. So that probably is my core concern, how the traffic is going to impact public health and quality of life for everybody who already lives there. We have to take that very seriously. So, I mean, I still have lots more concerns, but those are my primary concerns that I at least wanted to lift up and make you aware of this evening. Thank you.
All right, so you have all of those noted, I would assume, Attorney Falcon, when we get to the special permit, I'm sure we'll go into those into a lot further detail. I will just make one comment for counselors, especially maybe the new ones. Once this special permit is approved, assuming it is approved, it is in force regardless of who owns the land. So any future buyer, they say that they're not going to sell it if something happens in the future. This special permit still goes with the land, regardless of who owns the land. So anything that's in there, they will have to match.
I appreciate that comment, but I think it's also important for us to remember that assumes that the new buyer would actually follow that, and often when those problems come up after the problem already occurs. So after the snow is dumped into the wetlands, then it would be brought up. So like the damage will be done before we're able to respond. And I think that's important to remember.
All right, anybody else with questions, comments on this side of the room? Councilor Landers. Well, I looked on both sides and you were...
Hey, good to see you, Bob. I haven't seen you for a couple of years, Don Landers.
Hi, Don, how are you?
Madam Chair, I'm going to have a lot of comments as we get into here. I mean, this is an interesting project. My initial reaction, though, Madam Chair, is, they've done a good job. I say, I don't worry about conservation too much, because I have a good feel about our own conservation group. I mean, they're the best. My initial reaction on this presentation, and by the way, I would have loved to have had some of this material last Friday, Madam Chair, but I think we should work on that. What I see here, my initial reaction, and this is going to be quick, that you people have moved forward with this project, the design, the number of units, the number of parking places, and so forth, as if you were utilizing all 25 acres. And unfortunately, you can't use all the acres here. And that really, puts a squeeze on you people. And I think that's what you have to take a look at. For example, that pool, I looked, and eventually you're could have 400 people here. All right, number of bedrooms and so forth. The pool had 6 chase lounges around it. The exercise room had, I think, 6 workout machines, stuff like that. So basically, in some ways, you've presented this, you're trying to make it work on a much smaller, usable parcel. And I think that's something we have to address the next meeting and as we get into this, that 4 gigantic buildings with 47 units in each building, 300, almost 400 parking places. And, if you had this parcel of land on a scale, it all tips one way. And that's not your fault, because there's wetlands there. So I think, Madam Chair, as we get into the next meeting, the meeting after, we have to take a look at that. Have they got into a situation where the designers and architects and engineers, they've worked this as if there's 25 acres, when I think that front parcel's only, 7 or 8. And I'll get into it later. Some of the things I miss from when I first met with this group a couple years ago in my office, I think Karen was there. When they told me it was going to be 50 feet from Route 20, I really don't want a building 50 feet from Route 20. What I probably will have in the next meeting, maybe, I might not present it, but the 5 best apartment complexes in Marlborough, and probably the 5 worst, all right? One of the best is Royal Crest that was built by Flatley in 1968. You know, I'm not going to name the worst ones right now, and I'm not sure where this one's going to fall. You know, what I would have liked to see, you know, in that parcel of land, that, you know, there was an entranceway. Of course, what I really would have liked, a big white house with a white fence all around it. But, you know, I'm a realist. You know, I know that's not going to happen. But it has no features or characteristics of what that parcel of land looked like. Even the horse you had on the mantle was a thoroughbred. They raised standard breds there. So keep that in mind. So, Madam Chair, as this goes on, I think we have to address the size of this project, the number of units, the number of parking places, you know, how big a swimming pool are they going to have? You know, we will be a while before we project the number of students, a number of kids. So we have a long way to go, and I think they could come up with something good. But right now, as presented, I don't think this is good. So as we progress, Madam Chair, I will, you know, bring up other concerns I have. And I must admit, you know, something's going to go there. So don't get me wrong, that's something, and it's not the Stop and Shop that they thought, you know, 30 years ago. But I think that this has a lot, we got to work on this. And I think all our committees ahead of us have done a good job. But now we have to address what a good-looking project will look like, and also we have to address the concerns of the people that live and work along Route 20. You know, we got a lot to do. But I know, Madam Chair, you will run us through this fine. Thank you.
And Councillor Landers, you are right. We do have a lot of work to do. And one of the things I will remind the councillors is that we do have a design review packet in the files. I don't know for sure if it actually got part of, I'm sorry?
You can find it on the website.
It's on the website, so I would suggest that you all fill that out. We can compare our scores with their scores and have a discussion at a future date. So, Councillor Navin, you are our final committee member. If you have comments, questions, you are up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of the questions and concerns that I have been raised tonight and will be discussed, I hope, at the next meeting, and something tells me in subsequent meetings after that. So with that, I will not take up any additional time of the applicant this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I apologize to Councillor Ossing, who sits behind me, so I totally spaced out that he is in fact present at this meeting this evening. So I will open it up to other people, and hit me over the head, Councillor Ossing, if you want to say something.
We got to get you some mirrors.
Otherwise, anybody in chambers that I can see raise a hand with questions or comments this evening? Councillor Irish, Councillor Dumas, I don't see. Councillor Ossing? No? All right, we have a couple people on the remote. Councillor Perlman or Councillor Oram or Councillor Tenera?
This is Councillor Perlman.
Oh, Perlman, questions, comments?
Thank you. I will also echo a lot of the concerns and don't want to take too much time up by the applicant. I would love to see, when we do discuss the traffic, some of the integration with the Route 20 plan, just given even the graphic that we saw. I drive on Route 20 all the time. It does seem very dangerous. And I am concerned of how close the project is and the sidewalks over in that area. And I do share the concerns that were raised regarding the size of the project on the land itself. It does seem like an overextension of the use given the amount, and I do commend the applicant for the excessive green space that is available and wanting to preserve a lot of it for the city of Marlborough. I think that's really wonderful, but I do share a lot of the concerns that were raised around the volume of the units, the amount of parking that's going to be needed, the traffic that's going to be coming out, and the impact it will have on the public health in the area, given all of the gas emissions from the cars, and also just the overall impact of that many more people in that area and the stress that it will have on the resources of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perman. Councilor Oram or Councilor Tenera?
Councilor Roby, Madam President, I have no comments at this time. Your committee did a great job in recapping tonight's event, so thank you so much and great job.
All right, hopefully you can be with us at our next meeting and future meetings. Councilor Oram.
Thank you, Chairman Roby. Thank you for recognizing me. I appreciate it. In reviewing, I could say pretty much I concur with the first discussion from Councilor Doucette. Really on target as relates to traffic. We all know in the city of Marlborough, and I'm sure the developer knows, the issues on Route 20. And I don't believe that can be resolved overnight. Some serious issues down there, lots of traffic accidents, a lot of issues with not having a turnaround lane. It's just too congested the way it's built. And to add more to it at this point, in my view, I'd like to hear from the applicant how they could make it better, give them the opportunity. But unless they can do that, I think that's not just their charge. I understand that, it being a state road. But it's obvious that it's a major, major issue with congestion, accidents, and people especially trying to cross over to turn to another location, no matter where it is. Just going down to the transfer station on Saturday, about a month ago, I witnessed possibly 3 accidents that could have occurred in front of my eyes within a half hour. It's obvious that that's something that's a major concern, that unless the applicant can convince me they can fix it, I really feel that this is not the right time to be putting this project in. But I will compliment the project on its energy efficiency. I like the idea of solar panels. I wish we could pick this beautiful project up and move it somewhere else that's a more sensible location. At this point, this location, in my view, is not the correct, sensible location. But again, I give you a lot of credit for your energy efficiency, trying to make it a community. The pool looks beautiful, trying to get it around the trees. But it's just, in my view, not the right time to be putting a project of this type into that area, based mainly on the traffic concerns. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you. And for the 3 of you that are participating remotely, please do stop by the council office. You do have a copy of the PowerPoint and a copy of the updated plans for you to review for the next meeting. I see Councilor Dumas raising his hand.
Sorry, thank you. My GIS wouldn't load, so I wanted to get the actual information. So you're pretty much building on 72-35, which is about, according to GIS, the 3.2 acres of land. So even if you give a little bit more room to go into 73-28 parcel, I'm saying about 5 acres of land total. So when you write in the actual order for the special permit, the site has an area of 25.7 acres. It is correct, however, you're only building on 5. So things for me have to happen organically and not so forced. So it's a great sales pitch that you're building on 25 acres of land when it's really 20 acres of unusable or not buildable land. So for me, it's just extremely dense that you're building. Again, it just seems like even with the additional parking lot to the side, like I think you're just trying to retrofit everything. And I think that's the concern a lot of the constituents and residents of Marlborough have, where when you look at this big parcel of land, you're saying this, but you're building that, and it just doesn't jive. So when you use language that you're building on 25 acres, yes, that is correct, but you're really only building on 5. So if you came in and said that on a different parcel of land and how densely populated it is, I think we would have a different mentality that this project may not be the best for 5 acres of land. That's one of the big concerns that I have, is that it's just so densely populated on such a small acreage of land that you're actually utilizing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with comments or questions in the chambers? No? Any final comments from the applicant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate all the comments and questions that councilors have brought up. Look forward to addressing them at future meetings. I've taken copious notes, and while our next meeting will focus mostly on transportation and access, not all of the things that were brought up tonight pertain to that, and we'll be happy to address those at future meetings. I heard a lot of potential conditions that we can, I'm drafting them in my mind right now, conditions that I think can address a lot of these concerns. As you know, I prefer that I like using the conditions that allow us to look back. We're saying the project's going to be X. You're not sure about that. We have a condition that says if it's not X, we revisit this issue, and here's how we address it. And I think a lot of the concerns that folks have brought up lend themselves very well to those kinds of conditions.
Thank you. And I know the plan is to have a discussion with the committee members after this is over to set up our next meeting. So hopefully that can be done relatively soon, and we can get back in touch with you to confirm your ability to be at that meeting. And maybe we can set up a couple of meetings so we can keep this flowing.
Okay. Happy to compare calendars now while you have everyone here. All the likely presenters are either listening in or before you now. So if you're willing, we can talk through dates now just so we can map it all out.
Committee members, are you okay with that? I actually do need to run quickly. All right, did I hear someone say Tuesday? Next week, we already have a meeting set up for urban affairs, so that would not work, but the 27th?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I have a conflict that night. I have to attend one of my client selectmen's meetings that night. The 28th, I'm wide open, however.
28th is a Wednesday. Does not work for Councilor Doucette. Councilor Wagner, does it work for you?
My full calendar with me, and Wednesdays could work, but then I know I have something that Tuesday, but,
Thursday's the 29th.
That works for me.
Well, I think we ought to, Madam Chair, discuss what is a good meeting night. I personally, I can go any night, because, but Thursday, we've never had many meetings on Thursday, because I think part of the problem is getting the material. I think we're so used to trying to get in the material before a weekend and then have a meeting Tuesday and Wednesday. I think what we have to determine here, what members of the 5 members of the urban, and either have to, that work Tuesday and Wednesday night.
What about,
if they work Tuesday and Wednesday night, if they work Wednesday, we probably have to have a meeting Tuesday. So that's what we gotta decide, who's available Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We gotta stay away from Mondays. Thursdays, as I say, Thursday's fine for me, but I think as you go later in the week, you have a meeting on Thursday, and then you almost lose a half a week by the time you have the next meeting and get the material. So I don't get, let's not get trapped into that. So
What about
I think
Monday?
we got to decide who's available to, members of the committee, actually, Urban, that are available Tuesday or Wednesday, or which, you know.
Monday, on a Monday that we do not have a city council meeting, like the 26th, is that viable?
That could work. Mondays and Thursdays, I could do. You can't do Tuesdays.
No, Tuesday, I can't do Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Right.
Does the 26th work for you, Attorney Falk, and your other members?
I do have a conflict on that day.
As do I, I'm sorry. Generally, Wednesdays and Thursdays are largely open for me. Mondays and Tuesdays are tougher. But we will make work what we have to, but I do have a conflict the 26th.
26th, or?
All right, we were back to the 22nd then. Is that correct? Thursday?
Sure.
And my understanding is this meeting will be on transportation. So I think it will be, maybe it would behoove us to make sure that everybody has a copy of the DOT's Route 20 map, which I think we can probably get from Mr. DePercio, if Karen doesn't already have a copy. And then we have the site plan, so we know exactly how it connects to 20. So we should have everything we need if we can get the DOT's, at least that corridor, maybe not the whole plan, but specifically that stretch. And we can have a discussion.
Madam Chair, we also have our traffic impact analysis. I can get hard copies to councilors if they need it. I think some were already provided, but we can get full hard copies.
All right, if you can get those to us maybe by the end of this week, if not, at least on Monday of next week, that would be perfect, I think.
Okay.
All right, so we're going, is 7 o'clock timing work okay?
Why are we kicking it up to Thursday now? I'm just curious.
Because of the unavailability of the petitioner and counselors.
Yeah.
Okay, what
They
council?
can't
Let's
come.
start with the councils. What
So I
councilors
think we need to
aren't
just,
available on Tuesday and Wednesday? Members of the committee?
I'm not available Wednesday. Tuesday was the lawyer.
Well, we usually don't schedule our meetings. I mean, we have plenty of time on this, too. I just have some reservation about kicking these to the end of a week. That's all. And I'm available, don't get me wrong.
all right, because I think you had just said you were available on Thursdays.
I'm
so
available every night.
Okay,
Friday night, you know, but what I'm getting at, you know, why are we getting into that? Something we haven't done. And I personally think Mondays and Tuesdays are the best, we've found, I think, over the years, are the best nights for subcommittee meetings. That's all. So,
and I think everybody has their own calendars. My hope is that we can have meetings where all of the voting members of this committee are able to attend. If the other counselors are not able to, I think they can always watch the meeting. But I think it's important for this committee to be able to be present at the meeting. So I will do everything that I can to make sure that our schedule allows people's own personal work and other commitment schedules to make it work. So for now, we'll go with October 22nd and see, maybe offline, we can have a discussion for another meeting after that.
There'll be plenty to work through at this point. for
Friday
sure.
nights or Saturday morning would be good. You can make.
All right, so if there is no further discussion, if someone would like to move to adjourn?
Move to
we're
adjourn?
ready. All right, it's been moved.
Actually, should we do a motion to table, motion to postpone first? Point of order.
It's in committee, so we'll just set up a next committee meeting.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be postponed
Okay.
indefinitely. So we'll just continue with the posting for another meeting, and it will just be continued the discussion.
Then a motion to adjourn.
All right, there's a motion, it's been seconded. All those in favor of adjourning? And I don't need to do a roll call, so Counselor Landers, you
Oh,
don't
yeah,
want to
I'm up.
adjourn?
I'm up, yep.
I'm sorry, you're really voting no?
No, I'm for it.
Okay, so we have
It's adjourn, I want to go home.
5-0 to adjourn, and it is
No
8:20.
No hockey game or football game on, so I'm not rushing.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.